Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a really transformative book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. Our mission really is to pull out the core wisdom from this text and, show you exactly how to apply it in your own modern life. So from the boardroom in your career, right down to your business relationships, even just your daily interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've all felt that overwhelming pull of trying to do it all and the constant pressure, to just say yes to everything. So this deep dive, we're going to uncover what happens when really smart, capable people get trapped in that cycle of non-essential busyness. And more importantly, how you can break free from it.
Okay, so to kick us off, let's unpack this with fantastic anecdotes right from the book. Sam Elliott, he's this sharp Silicon Valley executive, and he found himself just, drowning. Endless meetings, emails, especially after his company got acquired. His work was suffering, stress was skyrocketing, and he was just plain stuck in busy work. What really struck me about Sam's story, it wasn't just the doing less part, it was how counterintuitive his mentor's advice must have felt, especially in that kind of high-pressure world.
Oh, totally. It's true. His mentor gave him some pretty radical advice. Basically, stay but work like a consultant. Only do what's absolutely essential and kind of keep it to yourself. So Sam cautiously started saying no. And to his surprise, people actually respected him for it. Then he elevated it. Before saying yes, he started asking, is this the absolute best use of my time right now? And the result, less chaos, way more impact. He actually started enjoying his job again. He earned more respect and, get this, the biggest bonus of his career. It really shows that your disciplined refusal, refusing to chase everything, that's what frees you up to master what truly matters.
Yeah, that Sam Elliott story really reveals a core truth, doesn't it? That no isn't just about setting a boundary. It's actually a strategic weapon. Essentialism isn't some half-hearted decluttering thing or just saying no more often. It's a ruthless commitment, really, cutting through all the noise and focusing only on what truly, truly matters.
Exactly. Think about the legendary designer Dieter Rams. He was only 24, designing a record player. And he famously asked, what's truly necessary here? He stripped away all the excess. What was left was this sleek, minimalist design that basically set the standard for the industry by the 1960s. His philosophy, less, but better. Vinegar, aber besser. And that just encapsulates essentialism perfectly, filtering out the trivial stuff so you can pour your energy into what's vital.
And it's really important to stress, this isn't about working less just for the sake of being lazy. Not at all. Imagine this. Two people, they put in the exact same amount of effort, right? One spreads himself thin across, a dozen tasks, barely making any real progress. The other person, they hone in on just a few key priorities and they really move the needle significantly. That's the profound power we're talking about with essentialism.
It really forces you to make tough choices. But those decisions, they compound over time. The difference between, let's say, a non-essentialist and an essentialist mindset is just stark. The non-essentialist thinks, oh my God, I have to do everything. They scramble, agree to every single request, always rushing, and they end up overwhelmed, stretched thin, and honestly not even sure if they've done the right things.
Right. Whereas the
essentialist thinks, okay, I choose what matters.
Yeah.
They pause. They deliberately say no to distractions. They actively remove roadblocks. And they end up feeling in control, doing meaningful work, and actually enjoying the process.
So living as an essentialist, it really means taking charge of your choices. And that leads to deeper success, more purpose, and honestly just more joy. But let's face it, society constantly pushes us the other way, doesn't it? Towards that chaotic, scattered life of a non-essentialist, which just leads to stress and, unfulfillment for so many people.
Yeah, the author shares this really powerful personal story that it really brings this home. It was the day after his daughter was born. And he found himself juggling calls, emails, the drill. He actually caved and went to a critical client meeting, even though he knew deep down he should be with his family. He showed up hoping for approval, right? But the clients just exchanged these awkward glances, and the guilt just hit him like a truck. Missing those first quiet hours with his newborn for what turned out to be a completely pointless meeting. That wasn't dedication. He realized it was fear. Fear of saying no, fear of missing out, fear of not being, essential to everyone. That experience taught him a really hard truth. If you don't take control of your own life, someone else definitely will.
Wow. Yeah, and that realization, that sparked his obsession, didn't it? To understand why so many smart, capable people constantly underuse their potential. It led him to leave law school, pursue all these different careers, and eventually end up coaching leaders in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. He saw these high achievers just silently crumbling under the pressure. Talented professionals completely stuck in meaningless tasks. And he identifies this as the success paradox. It kind of unfolds in 4 stages. First, there's laser focus. You start out, clear goals, unstoppable momentum. Feels great. Second, success hits. Suddenly, you're the go-to person. Opportunities are just piling up. Third, the wheels come off. You get stretched too thin. Distraction creeps in. That initial clarity just vanishes. And fourth, chasing success tanks it. You get so busy climbing, you completely forget why you even started climbing in the first place.
That reminds me of Jim Collins in How the Mighty Fall. He really echoed this. He said companies crash when they obsess over more instead of focusing on better.
Yeah.
And Peter Drucker, he predicted future historians would fixate on how we're all just drowning in options with absolutely no clue how to prioritize. And social media just pours gasoline on that fire, right? Constantly serving up another should or another life hack. It just leads to exhaustion.
Mm-hmm. The antidote really is to stop glorifying being busy. Just stop. And start asking, okay, what's truly essential here? We often mistake motion for actual progress. They're not the same thing. And decision fatigue, it's not just a buzzword. It's real mental exhaustion that sets in from having too many choices, too many decisions to make. And it's compounded by this endless feedback loop from social media, well-meaning friends. Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah. And maybe the biggest lie, the one we've all kind of bought into, is you can have it all. Ads sell it constantly, corporate culture worships it, job postings practically demand it. Think about the word priority. It used to mean the most important thing, singular. But somewhere along the line, we decided slapping numbers after priorities 1, 2, 3, 10 somehow makes everything urgent. It just doesn't work that way.
It really doesn't. And if you don't consciously choose where to focus your energy, believe me, everyone else will choose for you. Bronnie Ware, she was an Australian palliative care nurse. She found that one of the biggest regrets her dying patients had was letting others dictate their lives. Specifically, that phrase, I wish I'd had the guts to live authentically instead of trying to please everyone else. That's powerful.
It really is. And again, this isn't about just mindlessly rejecting things. It's about being intentional. Think of essentialism like a professional organizer, but for your life. Yeah. Instead of decluttering your closet, though, you're decluttering your schedule, your priorities, your mental space. Commitments pile up, right? Like unworn sweaters in the back of the closet. Without a filter, they just stick around, taking up space. An essentialist doesn't just tidy up. They fundamentally transform how you operate.
Right. And essentialism lays out 3 really critical truths that make this transformation possible. They help us ditch those pervasive myths, those feelings that I have to do everything or everything matters equally or yeah, I can handle both. Instead, we embrace, no, I choose to. Actually, only a few things really count, and I can do anything, just not everything.
Okay, so where does this all begin then? How do we start? That leads us straight to truth number 1, the power of choice. Choice is, it's fundamentally what makes us human, isn't it? The author talks about sitting in a lobby, looking at this messy brain dump he'd made of what he actually wanted from life. And nowhere on that list did it say law school. Even though he was already a semester deep into his legal studies, he'd enrolled because everyone told him, don't close any doors, Believing law meant security.
Yeah, he was juggling everything. He was convinced he could master it all, but he wasn't really thriving. Then this casual offer came his way while he was in the U.S. Someone said, hey, if you decide to stay, you should join our advisory team. That simple word, if, it hit like a lightning bolt. It framed his life not as a set path, but as a real possibility he could shape. He grabbed a piece of paper and scribbled one question. If you could do just one thing right now, what would it be? And the answer, very pointedly, was not law school.
And this connects directly to that concept of learned helplessness, right? That condition where, a person or an animal learns to behave helplessly even when they could help themselves just because they've experienced repeated bad stuff they couldn't control before, like those experiments with the dogs who stopped trying to escape shocks even when the barriers were removed. We can do that too. We become workaholics, maybe rooted in this fear that our choices don't actually matter anyway.
Exactly. But the real trap might just be the story we tell ourselves about that. You might be just one bold decision away from remembering your own power, your own agency. Right. As William James famously put it, my first act of free will is believing I have free will in the first place. Choice. It's the absolute heartbeat of being an essentialist.
Okay, so once we embrace that fundamental power of choice, the next big question is, well, how do we decide what's truly worth choosing among all the options? And that brings us right to the second profound truth. Cutting through the noise because only a few things really count.
Right. The most successful people, they don't just work harder than everyone else. They work smarter. They focus intensely on the very few things that truly move the needle, and they actively, deliberately ignore merely decent opportunities so they can chase the extraordinary ones. And science totally backs this up with the power law. You see it everywhere. It's that undeniable principle that in almost any system, a tiny fraction of the inputs produce the vast majority of the outputs. You know, the classic 80-20 rule, 20% of your efforts bringing 80% of your results. Essentialism teaches you how to find and really leverage that potent 20%.
Yeah, and most of us, if we're being honest, are kind of drowning in good enough opportunities. And while we're busy with those, we're missing out on the truly great ones. Essentialists don't just say no to the bad ideas, they actually have the courage to say no to the good ideas too, to make space for the absolute best.
That's where the 90% rule comes in. It's not just a filter. I think of it as a kind of courage meter. For any opportunity, you score it from 0 to 100 based on its single most important factor or criterion for you. If it doesn't score at least a 90, you just zero it out, walk away, no more agonizing over those mediocre 60s or 70s. Because that's where our potential gets diluted, right? And the good enough. This rule demands brutal honesty and the guts to trust that if you say no to the good, the extraordinary will eventually have room to show up. Derek Sivers has that similar hell yeah or no rule. If it doesn't ignite absolute enthusiasm, it's an automatic pass.
Okay, but the moment you commit to something like that 90% rule, you immediately face a pretty tough reality. Because if you're saying hell yes only to the extraordinary, you're inherently saying no to a lot of other things, maybe things that seem pretty good. And this leads us directly to the third and maybe the most challenging truth of essentialism. Trade-offs are real. You simply can't have it all.
That's the kicker, isn't it? Every single yes you utter forces a no somewhere else, whether you acknowledge it or not. Trade-offs aren't negotiable. They are a fundamental fact of life and finite resources, like time and energy. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. It just means you end up making messy, accidental sacrifices instead of clear, intentional choices. Take the Concorde jet, for example. Amazing technology, incredible speed, right? But it was a financial disaster for 40 years, hemorrhaging money. Leaders knew. They knew it made no economic sense. But the sunk cost fallacy kept them pouring in cash.
Explain that fallacy again.
Oh, right. The sunk cost fallacy. It's that irrational tendency we have to keep going with something, a project, an investment, even a relationship, just because we've already invested time or money or effort into it, even when it's clearly failing or not serving us anymore. We hate to feel like we wasted something.
Got it. Like clinging to bad investments. Okay. And Erin Kalin, the former Lehman Brothers CFO, you mentioned her.
Yeah, she described her own experience as a slow surrender to workaholism, just blurring the lines between her personal life and work until eventually nothing remained but the job itself. Her story reveals that harsh reality. Either we make the difficult trade-off decisions for ourselves, or we let circumstances or other people dictate them for us, and usually not in our favor.
Right. But sometimes companies make the right hard trade-off, like Johnson & Johnson.
Absolutely. The response to the 1982 Tylenol crisis is a classic case study. They faced a staggering potential loss, like $100 million. But their credo from 1943 was crystal clear. Customers first, shareholders last. That guided them to pull every single bottle off the shelves nationwide. Safety over profits. It was a simple but brutal choice rooted in their core values.
And Jim Collins, who we mentioned earlier, he chose to focus on building groundbreaking ideas rather than just a massive company. Southwest Airlines under Irv Kelleher, they focused relentlessly on efficiency and low fares, intentionally saying no to all the extras other airlines offered. So the point isn't about like amputating huge parts of your life. It's just about recognizing that every yes inevitably whispers a no somewhere else. David Sedaris had that great four-burner stove metaphor, right? Family, friends, health, work. To be really successful, you probably have to turn one burner off. Pick three. Okay, so these three truths, choice, focus, trade-offs, they lay the foundation. But essentialism isn't just philosophy, it's practical. It's a method, really, broken down into three phases. Explore, eliminate, and execute.
Exactly. Let's dive into phase one. Explore finding the few things that really matter. Now, here's the interesting twist. Essentialists actually explore more options initially than non-essentialists. But they do it differently. They don't just jump at everything. They test, they question, they sift through options like a detective gathering clues. Take Frank O'Brien, the founder of that marketing firm, Conversations. He implemented no phone, no email, no agenda, Mondays for his whole team. Think about that. Kicking off the busiest work week with structured space. This wasn't downtime. He saw it as essential fuel for clarity and strategic thinking.
That's fascinating. And the author worked with a tech VP who found himself spending 35 hours a week just in meetings. 35 hours left him zero room to actually strategize. Essentialists, by contrast, they deliberately create that breathing room to weigh options properly. But, the idea of monk mode or taking think weeks like Bill Gates does, that sounds amazing. But let's be real. For most people listening, that might feel like an impossible luxury. How do you actually find those pockets of undivided attention when the world demands constant connection and responsiveness?
It is tough, no doubt. But it's about being deliberate, even in small ways. Jeff Weiner, when he was CEO of LinkedIn, he religiously blocked out 2-hour chunks of just nothing on his calendar every single day. He didn't see them as wasted time. He realized those were the slots where the real strategic thinking happened, where he could recharge and ask the big questions. Isaac Newton, yeah, he went into monk mode for 2 whole years writing Principia Mathematica, and look what came out of that. Even the author adopted his own version of monk mode while writing this very book. It's really about engineering some sacred space for deep work, even if it's just 30 minutes or an hour, where you're truly unreachable. You have to protect that time.
Okay, that makes sense. Engineering the space. So once you've explored and hopefully identified a few vital things, we hit phase 2. Eliminate letting go of what doesn't serve you. And honestly, this feels like the hardest part for so many of us. We say yes out of habit, right? Or people pleasing, or FOMO, fear of missing out, or just plain obligation. But real progress, as the book argues, comes from knowing when to refuse, when to cut things out. Effectiveness isn't about doing more, it's about having the guts to say, actually, this isn't for me right now. But cutting out the unnecessary, it isn't just a mental exercise, is it? It's deeply emotional sometimes. It often means disappointing someone.
It absolutely does. And that's uncomfortable. But if you don't set your own boundaries, someone else will decide your priorities for you. That's guaranteed.
Okay.
Think about Rosa Parks. Her quiet defiance on that Montgomery bus, that was a split-second choice. A refusal, but it echoed through history. Or Peter Drucker, politely but firmly saying no to an interview request because, as he put it, he had his own work to do. That's a masterclass in setting boundaries without burning the bridge.
Okay, but how? How do we actually do that gracefully? Saying no without causing offense or damaging relationships.
Well, there are lots of tactics, and you find what works for you. It could be as simple as the power pause, just taking a breath before responding, gives you a second to think. Or using a soft no like, I'm really deep into this project right now, but I'd love to connect once it's done. Keeps the door open. You can say, let me check my schedule and get back to you, buying yourself time. Or frame it as a trade-off, especially with a boss. Okay, I can take that on. What should I deprioritize to make room for it? That puts the choice back on them. Humor can work sometimes. If I say yes to one more thing, my cat might stage an intervention. Or offering partial support. You're welcome to use X resource, and I'm happy to do Y specific thing. Lets you help without overcommitting, even redirecting. I really can't right now, but maybe Sarah could help with that. The key is finding your authentic way to protect your essential commitments. Like Nancy Dart's agency, saying no to everything but presentations. That ruthless focus made them world-class.
That's really practical. And when you're evaluating commitments you already have, the book suggests asking this powerful question. If I didn't already own this stock-item commitment, would I invest my resources to acquire it now? Apply that same logic to opportunities or ongoing projects. If this landed on your lap today, brand new, would you genuinely chase it? Or is it just sticking around because of some cost?
Exactly. That sunk cost fallacy again. Psychologist Hal Arks found adults fall for it more than kids. Why? Because we spent years being scolded, don't waste things. So applying a kind of zero-based budgeting approach to your time and commitment can be really powerful. You start from scratch periodically and demand that every commitment, every project justifies its continued place on your essential list. Does it still add significant value today?
Okay. Explore, eliminate. That brings us to phase 3. Execute working smarter, not harder. Once you've identified the essential and cleared away the clutter, how do you make sure you actually do the important stuff effectively? Essentialists build systems, right, to make execution almost seamless. Like Alex Rogo in that classic business novel, The Goal. He learned to find and relentlessly eliminate the bottlenecks, the one single thing that was choking the entire system's output. Fix the bottleneck and suddenly everything else starts flowing much better.
Precisely. Aristotle actually identified 3 types of work. Theoria, seeking truth, contemplation. Praxis, practical action, doing. And poiesis, creating something new. Essentialists, when executing, often focus on eliminating the roadblocks, praxis, to enable better creation, poiesis, rather than just throwing more resources or effort at the problem. So first, you absolutely have to gain clarity. What does done or success actually look like for this essential task? Be specific. Then identify the main bottleneck. What's the one thing slowing progress the most?
And that connects to the done beats perfect idea from Silicon Valley. Just asking, what's the smallest possible step I can take right now that actually moves the needle forward? Even a tiny step, like that story about the Richmond Police Department rewarding good behavior in kids, reduced screen time, more reading just by using a simple token economy. That simple tweak, focusing on the desired outcome and removing resistance, turned resistance into responsibility.
And routines. Routines are absolute secret weapons against chaos when it comes to execution. They transform essential tasks into almost automatic behaviors. This frees up so much mental bandwidth you'd otherwise spend on deciding and initiating. Many highly creative people actually thrive on surprisingly strict habits and routines. Jack Dorsey, co-founder of Twitter and Square, famously structured his week with specific themes for each day. Mondays for leadership meetings, Tuesdays for product innovation, and so on. That structure enables focus.
That basketball coach story, Larry D. Olmsted, really stuck with me too. He instilled in his team that losing isn't the same as being beaten. Winning, he taught them, demands total presence, tuning out the noise, the crowd, the score, everything, and locking into what's critically important right now in this moment. Which kind of aligns with that ancient great concept of kairos, right? It's not just about clock time chronos, which is linear and quantitative. Kairos is about the opportune moment, the right time, the quality of time. It's about being fully present and engaged for that critical window, rather than just frantically filling every minute.
Beautifully put. It's about presence. Jeff Rogers, that real estate exec, he uses what he called a refreshing pause before going home each evening. Just taking a deep breath, consciously shedding the workday so he can be fully present for his family. Thich Nhat Hanh's whole philosophy of mindfulness speaks to this. Like his hour-long tea meditation, it highlights how being truly present, even in simple acts, makes life feel real. Or think of Jiro Ono, the legendary sushi chef from Jiro Dreams of Sushi. That absolute total presence and dedication in his craft, that's essentialist execution.
Right. Our brains feel like they're wired for multitasking, but the book argues true focus isn't about splitting your attention. It's about consciously choosing where to direct it, with undivided focus. Clayton Christensen, the late Harvard professor, he famously refused to work Saturdays and Sundays. Those days were strictly dedicated to his family and his faith, non-negotiable. And apparently, that earned him immense respect and helped establish clear boundaries. It really demonstrates that if you don't define your limits, someone else inevitably will. But so many people, especially in demanding careers, almost wear burnout as a badge of honor. How can essentialism help shift that specific mindset? And what's the immediate cost of not protecting yourself, your asset?
That protect the asset principle is absolutely vital. And the asset is your mind, your body, your spirit. They're your most valuable tools for contribution. The book shares the story of Jeff, a super high-achieving CEO. He burnt out completely after 3 years of relentless nonstop travel, maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, constant airplane meals. His body basically mutinied, symptoms mimicking panic attacks. He had to step down from boards, strip his life of almost everything draining, just for a year-long recovery. And his realization was profound. Protect the asset. Burning out isn't a badge of honor. It's a fundamental failure of strategy. He learned the hard way that often the toughest challenge, especially for someone wired to conquer and achieve, isn't saying yes to the next challenge, but having the wisdom and courage to say no, to protect the asset.
Wow, a failure of strategy. That reframes it completely. As Socrates supposedly said, beware the barrenness of a busy life. Or maybe it was, an overloaded life is an empty one. Either way, the sentiment fits. Essentialism isn't a temporary fix, is it? It really is a lifestyle. It's the difference between majoring in what truly matters in your life and minoring in endless busy work.
Exactly. Every intentional no you say to the clutter, to the non-essential, it strengthens your yes to your actual purpose. It starts out as a conscious choice, maybe skipping that trivial meeting or finally pruning your overstuffed wardrobe.
Yeah.
But over time, with practice, it becomes more instinctual. It becomes part of how you see the world. It's that deep internal shift. The Greeks called it metanoia, a transformation of mind that changes not just what you do, but ultimately who you become.
And even the author admits, hey, he still slips up sometimes, instinctively agreeing to favors he shouldn't, or getting momentarily distracted by shiny opportunities. But essentialism isn't about achieving perfection. It's about progress, right? Consistent progress toward focusing on what matters. While others might be bragging about their jam-packed schedules, you'll hopefully find a deeper sense of peace and accomplishment in doing less, but better, purposeful work.
Yeah, he shares his own real proof, not in huge achievements necessarily, but in small, everyday essentialist moments. like lapping with his kids on the trampoline instead of going to another networking event, turning down high-profile international projects so he could have the focused time to write this book, deliberately carving out one completely screen-free day each week. It's these deliberate choices, consistently made, that lead to that feeling of certainty and peace he talks about.
So, wrapping things up, what have we really learned from this deep dive into essentialism? For me, it boils down to cultivating a kind of clarity. A clarity that cuts through all the noise and the demands. It allows you to take back the reins of your own time, your energy, your focus, and maybe find more joy in the small, essential things. It really is about consciously trading the trivial many for the vital few, the extraordinary.
I agree. The principles of essentialism offer more than just tips. They offer a blueprint for designing a life that feels authentically yours, not just a performance you're putting on for others. It teaches you practical ways to filter out the noise, to streamline your decisions, and crucially, to invest your precious energy where it truly counts the most for you.
Makes you think of that famous line from the poet Mary Oliver. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Essentialism feels like a powerful answer to that question.
It really does. And maybe to build on that, here's a final thought to consider. Decades from now, when you look back on your life, you'll inevitably have some regrets. Everyone does. It's part of being human. But choosing to live a more essentialist life, consciously choosing where to put your energy, saying no to distractions, focusing on what truly matters to you, that probably won't be one of them. So maybe the question is, looking back from the future, what essential decision will you wish you'd had the courage to make today?